Computer. All right. So it's recording now. So no Irish language, please. And
there's nothing wrong with the Irish language.
no, there isn't, is there? There really isn't. It has its own entertainment, but unfortunately, sometimes when we're speaking Gaelic, people think that we're swearing because of how our language actually can sound.
Yeah, that's very much like the Black Country slang. I think I touched on that the other day. I won't repeat, but yes, it is quite similar. It can be taken the wrong way.
Yeah. So anyway, this I just kind of thought, with everything that's going on in the world at the moment, and a lot of the pessimism that has been felt by people because we're been inundated with the news about this and that and too many things going on, and really we're not getting any sense of hope. And for some of us as well, it's like a couple of weeks ago, basically I had to spend most of the week indoors because I'm living with somebody who had to have a COVID test, and we had to wait for the results. And of course, if you suspect somebody in your household has COVID, you have to isolate, and that means it's a good idea if you can actually be kind to yourself while you're actually doing it, and make the most of it, because there isn't really a lot of choice in that. So now, I don't know how people think about how they think, but it'd be interesting to know if any of you ever had thought about where your next thought is coming from, and whether or not you could predict that thought. Right? Yeah. So with this webinar as well, I'm going to talk a little bit about opportunities to work with me, give you an opportunity to ask me loads of questions. And, in case anybody has to go early or anything like that, you can email me at teresa@lifechangingmelodies.com. Right. Now, all of us, unfortunately, have limiting beliefs. And the thing is, in many ways, we can actually challenge those beliefs. Now, here I'm with a gentleman that both of us have had major spinal problems. And we had to figure out ways in which we could work together to climb this frame, regardless of the injuries that both of us had. Now, if you had said to us a couple of weeks before that this is what we would be doing, both of us would have said independently, no, thank you. But it's amazing what happens when people put their mind to something. And this here saying, have fun. This was actually drawn by my goddaughter, who I think was 7 at the time. And I had just spent quite a lot of time in Ireland with the children. And when I'm taking care of them, one of the things that we do every morning as breakfast time, which for them they call wheat bakes, gruffalo pie. So we're having our gruffalo pie, and we kind of make a plan for the day, and it has to include fun. And I have a strong belief that if we don't include some fun in our day, and we don't kind of think how we could have some fun in our day, we could actually miss out on doing that. Because, as they say, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Right now, with you guys, I'm at the top here, I'm just seeing your pig images. Can you see the whole
Yes, I'm seeing in the background the image
slides. Yeah.
Yeah, you can see the whole slide, or do you see? Oh, okay, that's great. Yeah. Now you might actually think, what on earth is inner dialogue? Now the reality is that we all have it. Because in order to do anything, we have a little chat with ourselves, like whether it's what time we're getting up at in the morning, what we're going to wear, or I must go and make myself a cup of tea, and so on. Now, without that, we probably wouldn't get to plan anything. Some of you might be aware of how you sound for yourselves. Others of us are less aware and less likely to be able to hear it, partly because of the way our brain functions, but also as well, if we've got a lot of things going on in our mind. And now by changing the way it sounds, you can actually end up laughing, right? So does anyone want to say what they say to yourself when you make a mistake?
I'm quite harsh on myself.
Okay, what's something that you might say to yourself when you make a mistake?
That's all that was expected of me. Oh, that I almost tell myself, well, you were going to make that mistake because you're a failure. Oh, there you go. You weren't worthy of doing any better. Okay. So you almost sort of recognize that as it's the norm.
Right. Okay. So, and the tone of how you say that to yourself, how is it?
Quite critical, but I almost go back to a child.
Okay.
And it's almost like, oh, there you go. That's all you're worthy of. Yeah, of course you were going to make a mistake. You weren't worthy of doing. You weren't going to do any better. There you go.
Yeah. I mean, do you know the comedians?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you know that sounds funny?
Mm-hmm. So we say that.
Do you know anyone that sounds funny?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you say whatever it is you might say to yourself in the tonality of a person you find very funny?
Okay.
Like coffee, that would it be?
Right. That was gone.
I think there's
some sort of echo.
Yeah, I'm just echo. When you guys aren't I'm going to mute you. Has that stopped now?
Yeah, that stopped. It was all echoey.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So if you were to change and say what it is you say to yourself, right, in a very funny voice or completely distorted, how does that feel? Is it different?
Yes. The vibration's different, so it's not as hurtful and it's not as true.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not as big as you make the issue to be, because sometimes it's that minute little things and then it's sort of niggling away in your mind and you make it into something that it isn't, and it starts off at something small and then you don't even know how you've got from that tiny little thing to the end of the day where you're anxious and works yourself up about something when really it could have been addressed and put aside because there's bigger things to deal with.
Yeah, and something you mentioned as well earlier about this coming from childhood. Do you think what you're saying to yourself is a repetition of an adult that might have been giving you a bit of a hard time?
Yes, definitely. When you're told that you're not going to amount to nothing, when you're told you're not worthy of anything.
So if you were to recognize the question that I asked earlier, whose thought is it? Is it possible actually that thought wasn't actually your own?
That's actually very true, and I've never looked at it like that before, because you believe that those are your thoughts, you know, and actually they're not. It's just something that was said to me again and again. So you think it is as it was. You think that's correct because it was the adults who were saying that or telling you. So you carry that into life, don't you?
Literally. Now, these kind of questions are actually very important to think about because, as Jon Kabat-Zinn said, wherever you go, there you are.
Mm-hmm.
right? You know, we can't actually get away from ourselves. We can go to another country. You know, you probably often heard people talking about, for example, going to India to find themselves. But it doesn't matter what country you're in, you bring you with you. Now, a few years ago, I read this book called Miracle by Joe Vitale. And one of the questions he asks in the book is, you know, when you look back on every single argument you ever had in your entire life, what is the common denominator?
Okay.
Now, when you actually get to the realization, actually, I'm the common denominator. I was in every single argument, whether I won or not, whether it was my fault or not my fault, I was the common denominator. And so by recognizing that, it gives choice. Now, one of the other things we tend to do is when we have an argument with somebody is keep repeating the argument and going over the argument and going over it in our heads repeatedly, which can reinforce the feelings about it. And it doesn't matter what we think about at all, it creates energy within our body. Now, you all have had that experience, I'm sure, where you've had a row with somebody, or there's been, you know, some sort of an altercation, or somebody said something to you that was very unpleasant. You all know how that feels in the body. And the reverse is actually true. So the more you begin to recognize that you can take control of how you think and change your perspective on it, and recognize that you know, you can slow things down, you can deliberately decide to replay it in your mind in a different way, should you choose. I've written here that big people talk nonsense, and it was one of the things that my niece, when she was 2, pointed out to me, and unfortunately, we're the people that we talk the most nonsense to. Now, when it comes to replaying things in our mind, a lot of us have some sort of a visual representation of that. So, for example, some people will have pictures, actual, you know, single pictures of the situation. Other people actually run movies. And, you know, from one person to another, some people have small little tiny movies that are running around just like on a TV set. And others have full panoramic view, like an IMAX cinema. Now, I don't know if it had ever occurred to any of you, you can actually change your experience of the images you see in your mind. Like, for example, if I say to any of you, bring to mind somebody that you really love, who loves you, and bring an image to your mind. Does anybody want to say anything about any image that they've brought to mind?
Mm-hmm. I've got my little 6-year-old Alexander. Yeah.
Fantastic. And how far away is that image?
Oh, it's close.
Okay.
It is, yeah.
And how big is it?
About that big he is. Yeah. So he's like real life representation.
Okay.
Of his height. Yeah. He is smaller.
Okay. And is it in black and white or in color?
Oh no, full on very vibrant color. Yeah.
Cool. So make the image bigger and bring it closer to you.
Oh wow.
How does that feel?
I can actually feel things changing in my body, honestly.
Literally. So when, for example, if you're cocooned in your house for a couple of weeks and you're feeling like, oh, I haven't seen anybody for a while, but just bringing those images. Like with my goddaughter, I couldn't physically see her on her birthday because she's in another country, and with flying restrictions and so on, there was no possibility for me to see her. But I could imagine the image of her being very close to me, and it almost felt like I was touching her. And so it does intensify. But you can also use this technique for the opposite kind of situation. I'll give you an example where a few years ago, I had this lady come to see me in outpatients, and she was actually very heavily pregnant at the time. And because she had a psychotic illness, the police didn't actually believe her when she said to them that somebody's actually following her. So I said to her, I asked her questions about how she knew that somebody was following her, and she said she saw an image of him. So I got her to change the image to black and white, shrink it down so small that it fitted on her thumbnail, and then imagine getting a big plastic hammer and just beating the hell out of it. And she thought it was a very funny thing to do, especially after she did the exercise, felt much lighter, and then went down the shopping mall after seeing me. This guy just came out of wherever, approached her inappropriately, and she was actually very present and managed to get the security guard to deal with him. And the guy ended up doing a prison sentence for stalking her. And she was like, really felt empowered, because in that moment of actually hitting him, in her mind, she actually felt very, very empowered and believed she could deal with the situation, which I thought was great. It's also a very good thing to do if say, for example, you've had an argument with the boss, right? Because it ends up completely changing your energy. Which can be a good thing, really, because none of us really like falling out with people at work. It's it can be a bit of a nuisance, right? Now, and another thing you can do to help slow down the mind, and this is literally mind altering, and I can well appreciate that some of you might find that this is a little bit patronizing. I might think, oh, no, I'm going to get cross with you in a minute. But what I've found is that the more people need this exercise, the more annoyed they are with me. So I will ask you to just be patient while I do the exercise, which is to spend some time each and every night counting out on your fingers each and every word as you are saying it. And the more you can slow this down so that there are gaps between each and every single word, the easier it will be to give your mind to sleep. Now, I don't know about you in terms of what impact slowing down has like that. I know if I continued on much longer, I'd be asleep. And I've used this with so many people. And one person in particular comes to mind who was an obstetrician. And after she had her baby, she was quite unwell. And she asked me if she could have diazepam to help her with sleep. Now, she knew perfectly well that by giving her diazepam, it would impact the baby. One of the side effects being that the baby would possibly be quite docile and would have problems with breathing and feeding. So I thought it's a bad idea. Got her doing this exercise, and she just thought, this is a game changer, and I'm going to teach this to all my pregnant mums going forward. And as well, children love it. And younger children can really play with this. Like, you can have a competition, literally, like who can speak the slowest. And if you're the parent reading the bedtime story, you can pay attention to bringing your tonality down lower and lower until the child is asleep. And it really does work a treat. And you'll actually find as well, with the gaps, creating those gaps, that the sentences over time that you're saying when you're doing it, actually the meaning is disconnected. So the emotion to what you might be saying to yourself becomes disconnected as well. And depending on what you're saying, that could well be a good thing. Okay. So one of the things I'm doing now is putting together a program which is based on the Wheel of Life. And with the Wheel of Life, it's a coaching exercise that gets people looking at each and every aspect of their life. So the course is an 8-week course, which is very intensive, with weekly 3-hour intensive sessions for 8 weeks, and run over Zoom, and then the recording will be put in a Facebook group. There'll be exercises to do on a daily basis, which will all be recorded in the Facebook group. All the modules relating to this will all be in the Facebook group, just to make the whole thing much easier. And like I say, each and every aspect of life will be looked at. And towards the end, it'll very much be about creating a brighter future. Because like I was saying earlier, 2020 is not the year any of us would have ever planned on. And for some of us, we've possibly given up on some of the dreams that we may have had, or come to a standstill in life where we're kind of having to rethink what we're doing with the rest of our lives. Or indeed thinking, actually, maybe it's possible to do stuff that I hadn't actually previously thought about. The oldest yoga teacher in the world is around about 100. And, there are other people now who are doing other kinds of stuff that previously hadn't even been thought about. Like, many more people after 50 are taken up doing marathon running, weightlifting, maybe setting up a new business. Because I understand after teenagers, the biggest group of people setting up online businesses are actually towards maybe 70s, 80s, which is a big surprise, but a good surprise. Now, I'm a big fan in doing something you've never done before, because creating new possibilities is always possible. And you might be thinking, why am I putting up a photograph of me here doing this? Now, this is something that happened to me a few years ago, where I was in a good mood in the morning, went to the gym, afterwards went for a shower, as you do, and because I hadn't eaten all morning, and just done a good workout, I was at that point in the day where I really needed my lunch. But anyway, had my shower and found that somebody had left their shaving gear where the shampoo should have been, and so it took quite a slice out of my finger. Now, in that moment, I had to do an awful lot of stuff to stay very, very calm, to keep the people around me calm, to make sure that they took care of me properly. There was blood literally all over the place. And obviously, with the jobs that I've done in life, I wanted to make sure that, you know, nobody was actually touching my blood without actually any protective gear. So anyway, and then I went to King's, and in King's, they plastered up my hand and told me that I literally had to keep my finger elevated like this the whole time. Now, if you had ever said to me that I would go into work with my finger like that to the boss, you're joking. But there I was with that situation where I had to do exactly that. And so, you know, it just was one of those situations that really made me think that actually, yeah, sometimes you can do crazy stuff for very good reasons and be forgiven for doing crazy stuff. And you know what? The world's our oyster, and we can do whatever it is that we want to do, regardless of what anybody else might actually think. And you know, who knows where life will take us after you know, 2020, you know. But as well, you know, I'm somebody who has overcome a lot of issues to be sitting here right now. You know, I'm actually profoundly dyslexic. I've got loads of issues with doing technology, but still give it a good go. I was diagnosed with acromegaly as a teenager, and was using a lot of the strategies that I've been talking to you about today that I hadn't actually appreciated were necessarily strategies that were considered in, you know, for example, the hypnotherapy world. And visualization is a big part of, you know, hypnotherapy. I qualified as a mental health nurse in 1991, and then subsequently went on and did various other trainings and so on. And then after suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder about 10 years ago, at that point, I discovered Richard Bandler and started learning NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming. That's where I really began to appreciate the whole thing about inner dialogue and how we replay things in our mind when things have gone bad. And so now, with everything going on in the world, my wish and my dream is that I take my whole coaching practice online, and that people can work with me. You're more than welcome to email me, and you know, we can hook up and you know, take things from there. Any questions anybody wants to ask me?
Can I ask a question, Teresa?
Yeah, please.
You know, like when you told us about, you know, changing the tonality of our inner dialogue.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know, in the way I understand it, that's something that obviously we need to do it each and every time we hear that, you know, inner critic, and you know, be at it. Really, does it get easier with time, and does the new tone then with time becomes an automatic habit?
It literally does, literally, because I've been doing it now for so long that I don't really pay any attention to it anymore. I just know now when I make a mistake, you know what, just review what has happened, because you know, it's, if you've made a mistake, it's like, what went wrong there, so that you don't make the same one again. You know, but yeah, literally over time. And you can do this with the children. You know, you start practicing and playing stuff with them so that you become more conscious about how it is you're actually talking to yourself. And with the exercise of really slowing down what you're saying to yourself, and then if you actually put little spots around the house or have something on your computer or on your watch that every time on a regular basis you have that trigger, you ask yourself, right, has what I've been thinking about in the last couple of minutes been something I would want to share with anybody else? And if it's not, then you can actually think, right, okay, I can change that, you know, because as Shakespeare said, there's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so, right? And, you know, COVID is a big thing. There's no two ways about that. But some people are actually thriving during this time. And, you know, if you actually think about it, maybe some things are much better for you now than they were before. You know, but we don't per se talk about that. We're creatures of habit in lots of ways. You know, we have a tendency to always do what we've always done. But you know, back in the day, like in our kind of prehistoric times, the brain was actually wired to make sure that we remembered where all the bad food was, where all the dangers were, and so on. And it's like we've come a long way from the cave and nowhere at all. And so in order to really program ourselves to notice good stuff, we have to actually do that and make it a point, you know, like learning a new skill. You know, like, do you drive?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm guessing in order to pass your test, you took quite a few lessons and had a lot of practice to do before you got there.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, and like most people in the UK, did you take your test more than once?
I did. The second time round, I drove straight into a lorry. So yeah, I took it 3 times. Third time lucky.
Well, there you go. Yeah. So it's okay if you don't get it right the first time. There's always another time.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And if we're playing this game with children, you know, you get to have an awful lot of fun with them. But as well, it does help you think about how you think. You know, and so often as well, how we're talking to ourselves in our mind can actually show up in our face. Like, you know, we all have a sense if we walk into a room with somebody sitting there on their own, you have a sense whether or not they're in a good mood or not so good. You know, and we're unconsciously picking up on this kind of thing. So the more present we are with ourselves and the quieter our mind is, the easier it is for us to kind of figure this stuff out and be kinder to ourselves.
Brilliant. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. Anybody else got any questions?
Hi, can you hear me, Teresa?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that with regards to slowing down,
Mm-hmm.
I met you not long ago, actually, and I just wanted to share my experience of how much you've helped me tremendously in this time. I had severe anxiety when I met you, and I know now how fast I used to talk. It was almost like a train going, blah, 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 and literally my thoughts would trip over each other. And I'm totally a different person, and it's literally how many conversations we've had? You could count them on a hand, I think.
Yeah, not that many conversations.
Not that many conversations,
Mm-hmm.
but the content, well, you know, the massive changes I've made in my life. I've actually, you know, so many things have fallen into place, and a lot of it is past trauma that you carry into your adult life. And I've totally dismissed the things that I have achieved, and now I'm actually got a brilliant path. I'm moving house, I'm selling my house, I'm talking, I'm slower, my mind has got more clarity and it's calmer, and with doing so my health has improved as well. And I'm a happier person. I didn't realize I was so anxious, and it was showing in my face. So you're very talented in how you put everything across, because it's sometimes it can be over complex the way you put everything together. And like yourself, I'm dyslexic, so I kind of always dumb myself down, thinking I'm not going to be able to achieve something, and that inner voice. So it's nice to have the balance and also see how much can be achieved and what you're doing, and to be spoken to in that calming manner actually makes a massive difference. So you know, I just want to give you total gratitude for the influence and the help that you've given me already in this path. And like I said, I've not known you long, but it's massively changed where I am and where I'm going, and I'm excited for the future. And ladies, I truly, truly, you know, would say, take on board what Teresa is saying. She's got years and years of experience, personal experience, as well as sort of in the, you know, care sector. Yeah, I can't praise her enough just in the short time with what you've done for me.
Oh, thank you,
Thanks
Sim.
from my heart.
Yeah, thank you. That is much appreciated.
Welcome. I wish you ladies could see me. I actually put some lipstick on for you.
That's beautiful.
Next.
That's beautiful.
And
Yeah.
the dog's behaving as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's all right. Anybody else got any more questions? Okay. All right. Well, listen, thank you for coming along. It's very much appreciated. Just going